every single person that was coming behind you, every single person that was attached to your purpose, every single person that's relying on you to step into who you were called to be so that they can step into who they're called to be.
This is my race that's set before me, and the further I get in my race, the less my child has to run.
Not that I think I'm better than you, but I think I'm better than what I've been being.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Kingdom Chats podcast. It's your girl Tef. I'm the host here. And if this is your first time joining, you have just entered a space where we find the kingdom solution to the everyday problems and the everyday things that we deal with. And so today I want to jump right into the topic. The name of this episode is called Out of Order. And originally, when I thought about this topic, I thought about the fact that we're all going through things and we're all dealing with things. And sometimes we feel like our lives are out of order. And it may not be our whole lives. Maybe it's just a certain area of our life just kind of feels out of control. It kind of feels out of order. And when I brought that to God, when I brought that to him thinking, Father, I feel like things are not in order. His response were, if things are not in order, then maybe there's some things that are out of order. And when he said it, I was like, yeah, that's what I just said. There's some things that feel out of order. But how he broke it down to me was like, there's an order to this thing. The word tells us to seek first the kingdom and all else will follow. But a lot of times we have it out of order. So we have these goals that we're chasing. We have these dreams that we're trying to fulfill. We have these areas of our lives that we're trying to make a certain way. And instead of us seeking first the kingdom, we are seeking first ways to make those things happen in our lives the way we want them to happen. And when he really started to show me the areas of my life that felt out of control and that felt out of order were areas in my life where I have begun to not put him first. And so you have to be able to look at the challenges that you're facing. Look at the things that you're dealing with. Look at the areas that just feel like you are out of control and ask yourself the question, are you putting him first in that area? Are you putting the kingdom first in that area? Are you seeking first him in that area? Or have you begun to look at other things and place other things before him? Now, let's be honest. None of us are going to just sit here and say like, yeah, I don't put God first in that area, or yeah, he's at the bottom of the list in that area. But if we're really, truly honest with ourselves and we really sit down and are intentional about putting him first in that area and look at how we have been prioritizing him in that area, we'll find that we haven't been putting him first. And so I want to kind of expand on that a little bit. Because even as I was thinking about that, he brought to me even the fact that his word says the steps of a good man are ordered. And so those areas that we're frustrated in, we have two things happening. One, we've allowed that situation to get so big in our minds that it has taken our focus away from him, because focus is so important, because what you focus on expands. And if you've listened to my previous episodes, I've talked about perspective and how important perspective is, because how you see something determines how you act on it. If I see something as impossible, if I see something as insurmountable, if I see something as there's no way I can get through this, there's no way I can move forward, then I'm going to stay stuck right where I am. I'm not going to take the necessary steps to do better, to be better, to create better in my life. I'm going to be stagnant because of how I saw something. When you think about in the scripture, I always like to think about David, because there's this moment when he has a giant in front of him. There's this moment where there's something in front of him that he needs to overcome. But he wasn't the only one that had that same exact thing in front of him. But David was actually just coming to bring his brothers lunch. He wasn't coming there to fight that battle. He wasn't coming there to defeat that giant. He was coming to just do an average, ordinary thing of bringing his brothers lunch. His brothers were actually in the army. His brothers were actually a part of an army that were their job, they were designed to fight this type of battle, but because of how they saw this thing, they did not stand up to the giant. They saw themselves as smaller than, they saw themselves as less than, they saw themselves as unable to defeat the thing that was in front of them. And because they felt like they were unable to defeat the thing in front of them, they stayed on the sidelines. And then you have David, who was not even trained in battle, who just saw something a little bit differently. When he went up to the giant, it was like, hold up, who is this that is trying to defy my God? Who is this? Who is this? And you have to start asking yourself in your life, in this situation, who is this that's trying to defy the word that God has spoken over my life? Who is this that you're going to try to make me feel less than when God has already told me I'm an overcomer? Who is this? And when you can define who it is and start labeling things exactly as they are, that's the enemy trying to get into my mind. That's the enemy trying to make me feel less than. Because you treat your enemies a little bit differently than you treat your friends. You treat your enemies a little bit differently than you treat the average person, right? Because you know that my defense has to be up because this is the enemy. And a lot of us, we have all these boundaries, all these defenses that we have up in areas that, if I'm quite honest, we probably don't even need the defenses there. We need to switch our defenses into our mind, into our thoughts, because we just let any type of thoughts in. We let any type of thoughts take hold of our mind to the point where we are captive to the enemy and what the enemy has said about us. Any thought that comes up against you that is counter what God has said about you is from the enemy. And what do you do when the enemy comes and tries to steal something from you? If someone were to break into your house right now, would you just sit there and just watch them take everything, or would you at least try to fight back? If the enemy or somebody came to you right now and tried to hurt your child or hurt something that was precious to you, wouldn't you fight back? Wouldn't you put up some defenses? Because that's what the enemy's trying to do. God has spoken a word over your life. God has said something special. He has placed a treasure in you. The word literally says that there's this hidden treasure. There's this hidden treasure in these broken vessels. That's what the word tells us. And so you have something inside of you that God has placed inside of you that the enemy is going to try to do everything that he can to make sure that either you, A, never find that treasure, B, even if you found it, you wouldn't value it because you don't understand the value of what God has placed in you. So he'll have you devalue the very thing inside of you that God placed for you to do the thing that you were created to do and purpose to do. Or if he doesn't make you devalue it, or if he doesn't stop you from finding it, he'll try to take it. He'll try to take it every chance he gets by placing thoughts and placing things in your life and situations in your life that make you feel like, what am I even going to do with this anyway? Take it. If this is going to get you off my back, take it. If this is going to stop the enemy from trying to attack me, take it. And that's what the enemy does. But when you recognize that if I just put God first, he'll make sure that everything underneath him is settled. He'll make sure that everything else beneath him is taken care of. Then you can rest a little bit and you can be at peace a little bit. And my real goal here today is just to expand your expectation. It's so important when you're going through anything to have a proper expectation. Because with proper expectation, when you set up the proper expectation, then it eliminates the frustration, right? So there's been times where I may plan a trip and I'll put an address in my GPS ahead of time to kind of plan my trip. And I'll say, okay, it takes 2 hours to get there. So if I leave at this time, I should get there at this time because I have expectation of how long it's going to take me to get somewhere. But then there's those moments where you get in the car and it says 2 hours on the GPS, but then there's an accident, or then there's a detour, and there's traffic, and there's all these things that make the time to my destination go up. So what I thought was going to take me 2 hours is now saying it's going to take me 3.5 hours, and that's where my frustration comes in. because I wasn't expecting it to take that long. And I wasn't expecting to take a different route to get there. I wasn't expecting that. And so now I'm frustrated, not only because of the fact that I didn't expect this thing, but also because now I only left myself enough time to get there based on a 2-hour time frame. So now I feel rushed. Now I feel like I'm running late. Now I feel like I'm behind. And if we all are honest, there is an area of our lives where we feel like we're behind. We feel like we have to rush. And that's where we get the frustration. That's where we feel unrest. And that's when we feel like, am I ever going to get there? That's when we feel like, you know what? I feel like this area of my life is out of order. And the word tells us that the steps of a good man or woman are ordered. And when you understand that the order doesn't necessarily look like how you think it's going to look, but you place that in his hands and you recognize that his order is the order that I want to go. So a lot of times in our mind, we may think that the order is just a linear line. From point A to point B to point C, he's going to get me to glory, to glory, to glory, from better to better. And then when sometimes it doesn't go from better to better, when sometimes it feels like it's going from better to worse, we start questioning, am I still in his order? Because when it says the steps of a good man are ordered, it doesn't say what order that's in. And sometimes it looks like going forward and taking a step back. And sometimes it looks like going forward and then standing still for a little bit. In this one spot, he may have you standing still in a spot, but that's still part of the order. He may have you there waiting because the next step, the next phase, the next season of your life is not ready for you yet. Or maybe you're not ready for the next season. Whatever it is, you have to trust that where he has you is exactly where you need to be in this moment. And if we start to realize, like, you know what, maybe there's some time that was added to my GPS. Maybe this is taking longer than I expected. Maybe this is catching me by surprise. But just because it's catching me by surprise doesn't mean it's catching God by surprise. When you start to recognize that he truly does know what he's doing, that he is the perfect GPS, that he knows how to get me around all the detours, and he knows how to make up for time. There's been times where my GPS said 3.5 hours, and as I was going through, says recalculating. And now it's able to take me a different route that actually takes less time than what I thought. But it takes trust. It takes trust to allow something and God outside of you. It takes trust to give him that control to say, let you be my guide. Let you be my navigation system. Lead me and direct me. That's one of the things that I constantly pray. God, lead me and direct me towards your truth and your righteousness and towards the things that you have for me. Because there's been so many times in my life, like, this is not coming from a place of like spiritual highness. This is coming from a place of I thought I knew what was best for me. I thought I knew shortcuts to get the things that I wanted in life. I thought I knew, and I would pray for the things that I thought I needed in my life. And he has shown me over and over and time again that his way is always better than my way. And the things that I thought were going to get me certain places, that even once they were removed, he was still able to get me there. And the things that I thought that I needed were actually harmful to me. And the things that I thought were harmful to me were actually teaching me something. So once you recognize that, you know what, Father, I'm going to surrender it to you because you truly do know best. That's when you get the peace. There's a scripture that says there's a peace that surpasses all understanding. It doesn't make sense that I'm at peace right now. It doesn't make sense because everything around me says I should be stressing, and everything around me says I should be scared, and everything around me says that my life is out of order. But I have peace because I understand that my footsteps are ordered by God. And because I know that he's the one ordering my footsteps, when things look like they're a little bit out of order, when they look like they are chaotic, that he has something that is stable right in the midst of the chaos. And if I can stand on him and I can stand on the things that he said about me, I can stand on the promises that he has on me, that I can be at peace in any given situation and I can be content in every area of my life in any given moment. And I say all this, like I said, it's not coming from a place of like, yeah, because I've always done it the right way. No, I've been in those positions where I felt like, what am I supposed to do now? Just recently, even, I had this moment. I felt so overwhelmed. I felt so burdened and just heavy. And I couldn't put a finger on it because there's nothing specific going on in my life that would create this feeling, or nothing specific that I can pinpoint that I can say is the cause of me feeling so heavy. But I just felt heavy. And I remember talking to my brothers and my sisters and my mom, and we have like a little family line that we do. And one thing that was said is, it's how you're carrying it. Because a lot of times we want to look at what we're carrying and we feel like this is too heavy for me. And when you realize that a lot of times it's not what you're carrying, but how you're carrying it, that's really causing it to weigh you down, then you start to look for other ways to do things. And the thing that I had to realize is that the reason why things felt so heavy is because I was trying to carry it all in my own strength. And when I put it in his hands, when I said, Father, you said that I can lay these things down on you. You said that, you are a provider, that you are a healer. These are the things that you have spoken in your word, your character. When I am able to pinpoint that and stand on that and bring it back to his recollection, not that he forgot who he was, but sometimes he needs us to remember who he is. And so I had to start saying, Father, you said you're a provider, so I'm going to give this to you to provide for. You said you're a healer, so I'm going to give this to you to heal. Instead of me feeling like I have to provide in every area and feeling like it's up to me to do all these things to make sure that I'm healing this situation and I'm growing and I'm doing this. Like, sometimes you have to learn that God is literally leading you. And as sheep, being led, sometimes you just have to go with it and realize he's the one that's taking care of it. It's on you. When it says the battle is not yours, but it's his, okay. That means that sometimes I may have to show up to the battle and be present in the battle, but it's not mine to win. So God, here's my battle. Here's the thing that I'm wrestling with. Here's the thing that I'm struggling with. I'm placing it into your hands. I'm surrendering it to you. And I'm not putting it in your hands, but keeping it in my mind. Because a lot of times we want things to be out of our hands, but we don't allow it to be out of our minds. And so we say, God is in your hands, but then we stress about it. God is in your hands, but then we worry about it. God is in your hands, but then we're still trying to maneuver different things. And we're trying to play a role that honestly we weren't created to fulfill. That's not my role. Outcome is not my role. Outcome is not my responsibility. I did this message recently on Instagram where I was like, if you're feeling stressed and you're feeling overwhelmed, you're going to have to release control. And that's very difficult for some of us, especially right now in the world where it seems like everything is out of control. You want to have that feeling that at least I'm myself. I can control me. I can control my family. I can control these things in my atmosphere and in my environment. But you have to be able to recognize that there are some things that are in your control, but there are a lot of things that are not. And they weren't meant to be. As much as I love my children, as much as I try to shape and mold and help to nurture the things that God has placed in them, I understand fully that he is the hand that they're in and not my hand. And I ask God to help me, to give me the knowledge, to give me the understanding, to give me the revelations on how to guide them, on how to lead them, on how to nurture them. Like, I ask him for that, but I understand that ultimately it's in his hands and that I can do everything that I think I should do. I can do all the things that seem like they're right to do, but ultimately I have to trust that he's a better father than I could ever be. He's a better parent to my child that I could ever be. And so I have to release some control in certain areas. And when you realize that, that doesn't just go for children, that goes for careers, that goes for dreams, that goes for goals, that goes for aspirations, that if I place it in his hands and I partner with him, then I can't lose. I was talking to my brother yesterday, and he had recently watched the Kanye West documentary, or at least the first part of it. And one thing that he said that Kanye West has said that really stuck out to him, he said, God is on my side, I can't lose. And when you adopt that mentality that God is on your side, you can't lose. And you start to put that in every area of your life. God is on my side. My health, I can't lose this battle. God is on my side. I know that I'm going to be okay. And even when it looks like I'm out of order, I know that he's still working all things together. And even if it looks like I should be further along than I am, I know that he's ordering this step. There's been so many times in so many situations in my life that I never thought God could use. I never thought that God could use, because they always say God is not in confusion. God will even use your confusion. He will use dysfunction. He will use anything and everything to get to you, because you're that important to him. Your purpose in this world is that important to him, that he will use heartbreak to get you there, that he will use death to get you there. I say this all the time. If you've heard me in the past talking about how when I lost my father, that's the first thing that drove me to prayer. Because I lost someone who was such a powerful prayer that I never had to pray for myself, because I always knew, like, my mom, my dad, like, they got me. I know that they'll pray for me. I know their prayers get through. And it wasn't until I lost him that I was like, oh, shoot. There may come a moment in time where the ones that I thought would be able to pray for me won't be there to do it anymore. That's what drove me to be able to learn how to pray for myself. And as I learned to pray for myself, I was able to learn how to pray for others. And it opened up a whole level of access that I didn't even know was available to me. And it happened through the death of my father. And no, I won't say that that's the reason why I lost him. But God said, nothing is going to be for waste. Nothing is that I can't use to get you closer to where you were created to be. You were created to do something. You were created here for a purpose, for a reason. And sometimes we allow all these other things to distract us from the purpose. And a lot of times the enemy will he'll use shame and he'll use guilt. He'll use all these things to take you off track, because he knows if you just really focus in on God and what he said about you, that you'll be unstoppable. If you really truly start to put him first in all the things that you do, you will be unstoppable. If the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning is give praise and give worship and say, Father, guide me today. Show me today an opportunity in this world. Show me today an opportunity to do better, to be better, to create more, to help someone. When you start to ask him first thing in the morning, you'll start to see your day differently. When you start to bring your heartbreaks to him and your mourning to him and whatever is your grief, your dysfunction, whatever it is, when you start to bring it to him first, before I bring it to my friends, before I bring it to a therapist, when I start to bring it to him first. Because that's the thing, like, I'm not saying that you can't bring other things. It's just an order to this. So a lot of times we may need help in certain areas, and we may need a coach, and like I said, we may need a therapist. But there's an order. So God, I'm going to bring my issue to you first before I bring it to my therapist. I'm going to bring my issue to you first before I call my friend and vent for 30 minutes. I'm going to bring it to you first before I scroll on Instagram, finding posts, reels, and quotes that validate how I feel. I'm going to put you first. And when I start to put him first, then he can direct me and guide me and really, really, truly order my steps. And I don't have too much more to say about it because I think you guys have gotten the point that if you seek him first, when kingdom comes first and everything else comes after, he doesn't want you to go without. He's not asking you to be broke. He's not asking you to be heartbroken. He's not asking you to be lowly and think low of yourself. He's not asking any of those things of you. He's just asking that you put him in the beginning, that you get to know him first. That before you go on Google today to ask Google a question, that you bring the question to him first. I am good for that. Like, I'll have a question in my mind and I'll be like, Google, what do you say about soulmates? And I had to stop and say, God, what do you say about soulmates? Or Google, what's the best way to overcoming anxiety? God, what is the best way to overcome the anxiety that I'm feeling? When I bring it to him first, he shows me so much. And it's so detailed to me. Because that's the thing, since he knows me in this form. He knows me in my past forms. He knows me in my future. Because he knows all and sees all, he's able to really lead me. How they say hindsight is 20/20. It's always easy to say something or how it should have gone when you already know how it's going to turn out, right? That's God. He's already ahead of us, and we have access to him. We have access to the Holy Spirit. We have access to our future, and yet we don't ask him first. And a lot of times we ask other people or we look to other things, and then we ask God to bless what we've already decided to do. God, this is the one that I want to be with. Can you bless this? God, this is the job that I want. Can you bless this? And we want him to come into alignment with the path that we've chosen. We want him to come into alignment with the order that we've set for ourselves. So in my mind, the order goes, I'm supposed to get married by this age. I'm supposed to have children by this age. We're supposed to be happily married with a good career, and we get to travel. Like, that's the order in which I saw this thing happening. God, can you bless my vision? God, can you bless the way I want it to go? Instead of coming to him and saying, God, how do you want it to be? What is the order that you have set before me? Who is it that you want me to be with? What career do you want me to have? And then say, God, can you align me with that? God, can you bring my heart into alignment with what you have already called me to do? That is the most spiritual prayer I can pray sometimes. It's like, God, I don't know, but you do. Can you help me to get in order? Can you help me to get into alignment with what you have already spoken about me in heaven? When I found out and realized, because I didn't always know this, but the moment I realized that God spoke a word about me, that I'm not random, that my life is not random, my children are not random, that everything that I've gone through and everything that I've dealt with, none of it is random. When I recognized that, then I was able to ask God, help me to get into alignment with what you're already doing in this earth. Because you have a purpose and a plan that's bigger than me, that's greater than me. And if I can just get into the flow with what you're already doing, with what you're already pushing forward, with what you already have purpose in my life and in this world, if I can get into alignment with it, then there won't be so much fight back and so much pushback. And when those obstacles and those things do arise, I'll be so focused on what you've already said that the distractions won't get in my way. The doors closing won't get in my way, because I recognize if the door closed, then that's not the order for me. Wrong order. Let me go to the next one. When you realize that all of your steps, not just the steps that you like, not just the steps that feel good, but all of your steps are ordered. Your lonely season is ordered. Your season where you're not financially stable is ordered. Your season where you don't feel loved or you don't feel whole or whatever it is that you're experiencing in your life in the season that you're in right now, wherever you stand, it is ordered. And because you know it's ordered, you can trust. You can trust that he's going to get you exactly where you need to go. And you don't have to stress through it. You don't have to be frustrated through it. You can give him praise through it. You can remember how worthy he is. If he never did another thing for you in your life, he's already done so much. If you can just remember those things. A lot of times we are standing in the very things that we prayed for, and we're not even grateful for them because they don't feel like how we thought they were going to feel. Or because in the moment that we're sitting in or living in our previous prayers, we're so focused on the future prayers, the future things that we want, that we're unable to experience the fullness of our blessing. And I don't want that to be you, because in this life, there is so much that we could be focusing on, our pain, our suffering, our struggles, whatever it is. Yeah, you can focus on those. But as I said before, what you focus on expands. And so why focus on something that you don't want to expand in your life? When you can focus on him, the more focus I have on him, the more I put him first, the bigger he gets in my life. And the bigger he gets in my life, the smaller these other obstacles seem. That's the power of perspective. That's the power of how close you are to something. The closer I get to something, the bigger it gets. So the more time I spend with God, the closer I get to him, the bigger he becomes in my life. And the bigger he becomes in my life, the more he outshadows everything that's not for me, everything the enemy tries to throw at me. He is bigger than that. And a lot of times the reason why these other things seem so big in our lives is because we have made God so small in it. We've come and we've stepped back, so far back from him. And I'm not saying you're disconnected from him, but you kind of put him far. You put him toward the end of the list, the end of the priorities. I'll listen to a sermon if I have time at the end of the day. I'll go to church if I feel up to it, if the weather's good. I'll pray if I get a moment to pray. Prioritize. What you say is so important to you. A lot of times our priority list does not actually look like how we live our lives. Because we say God is up here. We say God is so important. But if you actually look at your list of how you live your day to day, are you actually putting him in the place that you say he's in? Oh God, you're the head of my family. Is he? God, you're the head of my finances. Do you tithe? I put you in top tier in front of everything. But when it comes time to do the thing that he called you to do, or that he created you to do, if the circumstance is not right in this situation, you won't do it. Are you prioritizing your feelings over God? Are you prioritizing your emotions over God? Because that's the thing too. It's not always that you're putting someone over God. Sometimes you're just putting your situation, your pain, your grief, you're putting that over him because you're saying, this is so much more than you, that I'm focusing on that. I'm going to sit in my grief instead of sitting in my prayer. And I'm not saying that you don't feel grief. I'm not saying that you don't feel your emotion, that you don't feel your feelings, because that's very important. Again, I'm just talking about the order of things, the priority of things. Which one is more important? I'm sad, so I didn't pray. How about you pray because you are sad? I'm feeling lonely, so I didn't even bother to go to church because, I just feel even more alone when I'm there. Or I don't go to church because this person hurt me. Is your hurt more important than what God said? Not to forsake the assembling of his people? Let us put things back in order. Because when we do, you will start to see that everything was working out for your good in the first place. that all these things that the enemy was trying to throw at you, that they couldn't stop you, they couldn't hold you, because God has something greater for you all along. So I'm going to leave it there, guys. I hope that you heard something that helped you in your moment. If you got anything from this podcast episode, I want you to do me a favor and share it with someone. Share it with someone that needs that reminder to put God back at the top. Share it with somebody that needs to understand that if life feels out of order, it's because there's something that's out of order, and most likely it's because God is not in his proper position. So share. And I will see you guys on the next episode of the Kingdom Chats podcast.
What I've been being.